I wash my hands every single time someone shakes my hand because I cannot have a moment of peace if I don't do so. I will have pictures of big germs taking a leisurely walk on my palms, digging their ugly atom-like structures into my skin. Hand sanitizer is literally my best friend because it gives me a moment of peace before its stickiness becomes a nuisance that reminds me that washing my hands is always better. This is a reminder, a constant one, of the deep impact that the pandemic from 2020 has had on my life. I don't know about you, but I spent the pandemic years in France. I actually didn't get to enjoy my master's degree because it was disrupted by the first confinement we had just 6 months after arriving in France. We also had a second confinement in October 2020, which was just a month after moving to Paris for my internship. The following 2 or so years were full of spending time alone and always carrying a certificate to show you had the permission to be outside your home. In between all of this was the constant messaging that relayed the importance of washing hands, but really how dangerous human beings had become because coming into close contact with even one of them could be the reason why you ended up 6 feet under. Every time I went grocery shopping, there were marks that showed where everyone needed to stand about 1 meter away from each other. It was very clear that staying away from human beings was the only right answer. And then suddenly, as if nothing happened, everything returned to the so-called normal, which was and still is very confusing actually, because that reality of needing to stay away from other human beings for survival, that had become my normal. And so whatever society returned to post-pandemic doesn't really make sense to me. I only spent about the first month and a half of my 6-month internship working in the office before we switched to remote working for 3 to 4 months, and then back to the office for the last month, which of course was filled with paranoia. We had to wear masks the entire day, and coughs from anyone was enough to send you spiraling because what if they had infected you? But that wasn't actually the biggest problem for me. It was this knowing that we actually didn't need to be at the office because we had spent months working from home and we all did our jobs well. It was realizing how this idea of work culture is very much a big scam because if we are being honest, lots of the jobs of the 21st century are not necessary because they only exist to serve capitalism and not to really make the lives of human beings much better. This realization was hard because my spirit had now found a new reason to fight for a different way of life, but my brain was hell-bent on doing what was deemed normal. This is where my symptoms of burnout started forming their wall, which of course I ignored because who has time for that when you need to survive? I later learned the hard way for ignoring this, so don't be like me. The fact that even now there are companies that don't allow remote working anymore is baffling to me because what is the reasoning here? One of the freedoms I got from working remotely is the absence of constant office politics, which I find to be not only a complete waste of time, but also plain stupid. I mean, of course, this is why I'm not in the corporate world, because I cannot find it in me to participate in this stupid game. And whether you believe in office politics or not, if you want to thrive in the corporate workplaces, you have to participate in it because it will affect you. And actually, I have been watching a Chinese drama called The Rational Life, which is set in the corporate world, and I have been highly triggered by the very real and painful depiction of office politics, and most especially when you're a woman, because the layers of misogyny that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is preposterous. It's even worse when you are an ambitious, smart woman because you'll be attacked for daring to take up space. In short, I don't understand why the majority of people always keep quiet when a few people are making decisions that affect all of our lives. And when one chooses to not want to follow the absurd and unnatural normal, they are punished for daring to go against the norm. The pandemic was a wake-up call to all of us because it showed us that the artificial way of life that was damaging to us was unnecessary. In fact, it showed us the people that truly build and maintain our societies, the essential workers, are the most important, and this is why those are the people we should be paying the most and giving majority of our support. But alas, it's just been a few years and seems like many people have chosen to forget that. Now we are living in a world controlled by a few rich men who think they need technology at the expense of human beings, billionaires who don't believe in treating human beings with dignity and who use their money to exploit and oppress people. And somehow, majority of people are actually cheering this on. born because somewhere in their brains, they think they'll be like this billionaire someday. They make excuses for the blatant abuse of power with phrases like, they worked hard to get to where they are. I find this so astonishing because the same people that support those who misuse power always seem to be so shocked when they face injustices orchestrated by these powerful people. What's worse, they'll refuse to acknowledge the evil that their heroes are doing because these everyday people have tied their identities to these billionaires who don't even care about them. And that's exactly how we end up with societies that are absolutely toxic for everyone, societies that only seek to control and silence people. This is why I don't like being around many people, because from my own experiences, a lot of them are so blind to their own desires and motivations, but somehow have a lot of advice to other people about how to live. The reason why we have the worst kind of leaders at the helm of the world and our countries is because majority of people are so blinded by their hate and greed that they are always seeking to punish the people they don't like, even when it means creating a society that is also bad for them. Recently, I was taking my daily evening walk when I stumbled upon an individual who wanted to make it very clear to me that if I don't give birth to a child right now, I will regret it. He also made sure to emphasize that he will always be around to remind me how bad of a choice I am making when I am 45. This is exactly why I don't like leaving home, because why do I have to listen to such senseless things? This desire by many people to always have expertise on the lives of others while theirs is just nothing but entertainment for bored village dogs and chickens baffles me. I just don't get it. Why are people so obsessed with how others are living their lives when it's not even affecting them? Why is there this desire to tell some people that their choices are wrong, when most times what the majority call the right choice or the normal choice is what is actually harmful? This reminds me of the people who call me weird, not fun and boring because I don't drink alcohol. This was something that I had very many times while in university in Kenya, and even when I went to a workplace where people indulged in free alcohol on Fridays, and it made me wonder, you really think intoxicating yourself and doing embarrassing things is something to brag about? Of course you can drink all the alcohol you want, you have the free will to do so, but please don't tell me that just because I don't live like you, I have a problem, because guess what? I am so confident in my own choices and I don't go around telling people to be like me. This is why I don't like this idea of community, because it is the reason why people feel so comfortable to want to give unsolicited advice, but also to want to control how other people live. It's because I care about you, that's what they say. When you look on the surface, yes, community has always been a good thing, but when you look closely, you start wondering. It is a fact that the idea of community that many people have was actually powered by and very much dependent on the oppression of women. Our grandmothers would always meet with their peers for tea time or for Bible study, not because they had time for it and they cared for each other, but because that was their way of running away momentarily from the horrors they had in their homes. Many of them couldn't go to work, and those who did, all the money they had was always being taken by their husbands. The reason why marriages lasted longer is because women weren't allowed to leave toxic relationships or marriages. Even in many African countries today, there is still so much stigma on divorce, and there are many women, even those with PhDs and positions of power, who stay in unhealthy marriages just so that they are not disrespected. I find that this was briefly but beautifully depicted in the K-drama The World of the Married. Community comes up with rules and we are all expected to follow them, and those who go against them are always treated in the worst way possible as a warning to others so that nobody else dares to follow suit. It is a fact that communities existed because women were expected to keep quiet when bad things happened to them. Community is exactly why we have victim blaming, because victims were always expected to keep quiet for the sake of keeping peace. The most vile human beings were always protected by families and their societies because that was necessary to keep everything together, and the victims would often be threatened to silence. And when they dared to speak up, suddenly they would be told that it was their fault that bad things happened to them. Most people even today like to use the Bible and their God to prove why victims go through horrendous things. But they never have the same energy for perpetrators who only need to say that they were possessed by the devil and cry crocodile tears before they are told they are forgiven. Community is the reason why those who have committed atrocities not only live, but they walk with their heads high. They are even proud of the evils that they do. They get rewarded with passing on their genes and even get positions of power. It cannot be a coincidence that the breakdown of community began the moment women had the right and freedom of choice. The currency for community is silence. it's enduring, it's suffering with a smile, it's being forced to remain in a cage. And now, because the world is going into a recession, hard times in the horizon, there are more calls for community and younger people are being admonished for being too selfish. Aside from the fact that the world of today doesn't really support community building, it is true that eventually the work of creating and maintaining this togetherness that many people want will end up falling on the laps of women. The unpaid physical, mental, and emotional labor of creating community will always fall on women, and of course, women can create women-only communities, but that only works when all the women you're building with are on the same wavelength, because there's nothing as draining as being with women who prioritize men, women who just live for men, women who will expect other women to bear responsibility for the bad behaviors of men. I'd rather be alone than have to deal with this nonsense in the name of community. I have always seen from the older generations around me that community means that there are a couple of people who have to drown themselves just so that others can be afloat. To exist in this sense of meaning amongst chosen people, it means that many times you have to give up even your own ideals and principles just to make the group happy. It means that if you want to live differently, you have to constantly get pressure to conform instead of embarrassing the larger group. So clearly, why would I accept to reduce myself just to make others happy in the name of community? And most importantly, why would I want to be around a majority of people who think that they can use the excuse of community to lecture others about their chosen ways of life, like the choice of bringing children into this world? I have never understood why people who choose to have children never ask for permission, but if you don't want children, it's as if you have to ask for permission, and yet that's the choice that's not going to affect anyone else. Bringing a child into this world means that how you parent your child will affect others. If you are a bad parent, like the majority have always been, you produce children that bully others, that assault others, that even end up killing others. So clearly, this is the choice that needs more permission and even a test. But because the larger society has accepted it as normal, anyone who goes against it is treated as the villain. This ship mentality is something I really struggle to understand because it has no logic behind it. And of course, this is based on my personality. It's how I was created. My MBTI is INTJ, and a brief description of people like me from the 16 personality site is INTJs pride themselves on their ability to think for themselves, not to mention their uncanny knack for seeing right through funniness and hypocrisy. Many personality types trust the status quo, relying on conventional wisdom and other people's expertise to guide their lives, but ever skeptical INTJ personalities prefer to make their own discoveries. In their quest to find better ways of doing things, they aren't afraid to break the rules or risk disapproval. I remember I used to feel so guilty for the way I am because everywhere I went I used to be called weird and abnormal. But when I found out about personality tests and realized that people like me actually existed, I was ecstatic. However, it is still a fact that there are very few people who think like me in this world, and we are always going to be on the receiving end of unsolicited advice from people who don't even understand themselves or why they're doing the things that they do. And so while I'm an extreme introvert, my lived realities have made me wary of the true nature of human beings. I don't believe that anyone is absolutely good or evil, but we all have these two sides in us. In fact, the worst people are those who have no idea of how much evil they are capable of. They're always in denial of their true nature. They're always obsessed with being seen as good people, but they're the ones that ravage every good thing they come across. These are the people who think they are the saviors of the world and they deserve positions of power. The political K-drama Trolley depicted this so well that it was shocking but very realistic. The show was actually based on the trolley theory, which is a moral dilemma that seeks to answer whether, as an individual, you would give up one person's life to save others, or would you let everyone perish? If you go around thinking you are a perfect human being who is a good person, you are more likely to cause more harm to others, because even when you do wrong, you'll do more wrongs to cover up the one wrong just so that you can continue to be seen as perfect and a good person. This is exactly why women were always expected to stay silent even when assaulted and raped, because in many societies, the lives of women weren't important enough as the reputations of the evil men who were fathers, men of God, husbands. This society cares more about killing those who are considered inferior to protect the pride of those with power in form of money and positions that design how we live. This is why as I grow older, I am more open to a life of solitude. I am tired of being expected to reduce myself to make others comfortable. I am tired of accommodating people who think they have a right to lecture me about my own life. I am exhausted with pretending to like normal life just for the sake of upholding community. Growing up is realizing that performing a script and calling it normal life instead of writing your own life is actually a disease.